Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty urgent warning from Geoffrey Hinton, the man everyone calls the Godfather of AI. Now, this is the person who dedicated his entire life to creating this technology, and now he's telling us we might have already lost control. All right, let's kick things off with the quote that got everyone talking. When he was asked for career advice, this was his answer. So why on earth would the pioneer of modern AI say something like that? To really get the weight of that statement, we first have to understand who he is. Okay, so section 1, who is Geoffrey Hinton, and why does his opinion carry so much weight in this whole debate?
For the longest time, the AI world was all about logic and rules, telling a computer exactly what to do step by step. But Hinton, he was on a completely different track. He championed neural networks, this idea of building an AI that could learn on its own, kind of like how our brains do.
And what's just wild is how long he stuck with it. For 50 years, that's 50. He was one of the only people who really believed in this. And, well, it paid off, big time. His work is the bedrock of the AI we all use today, from Google Translate to medical scanners. He even worked at Google for a decade after they bought his company. But then, he walked away. So, that's the big question, right? Why would the guy who created all this suddenly leave a top job to become its most vocal critic? What changed his mind? Now, Hinton is super clear about this. He wasn't mad at Google or anything. In fact, he says they were pretty responsible. He left for one specific reason, so he could talk openly about the risks of AI without worrying about hurting the company he helped build. For Hinton, this wasn't like a switch flipped overnight. It was more of a slow burn that ended with this huge eureka moment. See, he'd always thought that explaining why a joke is funny was a sign of real understanding. So when he saw an AI do it, he realized, wait a minute, these things aren't just parroting back information. They actually get it. And that future he thought was decades away, suddenly it felt like it was right around the corner. All right, so let's get into the weeds here. Hinton breaks down the dangers into two totally different categories, and it's really important we understand the difference. So Hinton splits the danger into two totally different buckets. The first is about misuse, what bad guys can do with AI right now. The second and much bigger one is about replacement, what a super intelligent AI could do to all of us down the road. And look, the immediate stuff, it's not science fiction. It's happening right now. We're talking about everything from deep fakes messing with elections, to AI helping design new bioweapons, all the way to swarms of autonomous drones, what he actually calls battle robots. And this isn't just a hypothetical what-if scenario. Check out this number, a 12,200% increase in AI-powered cyber attacks. And these are being made possible by the same kinds of tools that a lot of us are playing with every day. Okay, so that's the immediate threat. But now we get to the really big one, the existential risk of no longer being the smartest things on the planet. And Hinton uses this pretty stark analogy to get his point across. And this really hits on something important. As humans, we have absolutely no experience dealing with anything smarter than us. He says to think about it like this. Your dog has no clue what your job is, or what the stock market is, or why you leave the house every day. That's the kind of disconnect we could be facing. We might not even know we've lost control until it's way, way too late. And here's another great way he puts it. Yeah, it might seem cute and useful and totally under our control right now, but we're creating something that is going to grow up and become way more powerful than us. And you've got to be absolutely sure that when it does, it's never going to want to turn on you. Okay, so forget about killer robots for a second. What does this all mean for our day-to-day lives, for our jobs? Because Hinton is really worried about the immediate hit to our livelihoods. Hinton's point here is that this time, it's different. Really different. See, the Industrial Revolution replaced our muscles. Machines could dig ditches better than we could. But now, AI is coming for the brain work, the stuff he calls mundane intellectual labor. He gives his perfect real-world example from his own niece's job. Her task was to answer complaint letters. Before AI, it took her about 25 minutes per letter. With an AI assistant, it's down to 5. Now, that's great for her productivity, but it also means her boss now needs, 5 times fewer people doing that exact job. So, if the guy who invented this stuff is waving a giant red flag, why are we all still hitting the accelerator? Why can't we just stop? Well, that brings us to the powerful forces pushing us all forward, whether we like it or not. Well, according to Hinton, we're basically stuck in this crazy three-sided race. First, you've got companies racing against each other for profit. Then you've got countries like the US and China in a race for military dominance. And finally, you have the regulators, who are just too slow and their rules are full of holes. He points out that the big EU regulations specifically exempt all military uses of AI.
And you can tell this isn't just some academic problem for him, it's personal. He's basically saying, look, I can understand the threat on paper, but actually feeling it emotionally when he thinks about his own kids, he admits he's not even there yet.
So after all of that, the battle robots, the job losses, the superintelligence, the interviewer asks him the one question we're all thinking. After everything you've just said, is there any hope we can get this right?
And his answer is probably the most unsettling part of this whole thing. So there you have it. From the man who literally started it all, no easy answers. Just a profound and, frankly, kind of terrifying warning that we might be building something that we just can't control. And even he doesn't know how it's all going to end.